Hello, beautiful, soulful woman, and welcome back to the Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. This is episode 10, which means that all of the show notes, as well as any links that I mention, will be at blairrhianna.com/10. So today I have a very, very special guest joining us, Miss Mitle Southey. Mitle is a former lawyer turned intuitive guide and sacred circle holder. She's been trained in the leading edge science of intuition and as a modern day priestess and contemporary mystic with the Institute of Intuitive Intelligence. Her role as a sacred circle holder is to guide women to discover their unique purpose, innate self-worth, and deepest wisdom. She brings a modern spin to the ancient and sacred tradition of women's circles to women online and in person in Australia and around the world. Through Circle School, she guides, mentors, and supports women stepping into the role of circle holder. This was such a beautiful, beautiful discussion, and I cannot wait to share it with you. So without further ado, here is Mitle. Welcome to the Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast, the place to be for your weekly fix of divine feminine wisdom, empowered business mindset, and practical spirituality to help you break free from the hustle, find your flow, and grow your online business on your own terms, the feminine way. I'm your host, Blair Rhianna, and it is time to get aligned. Hello, Mitle.
Hello, good morning.
Hello. I'm so excited that you're here with us because it's even last week when we kind of touched base and just spoke about you coming on board, we easily had like a 45-minute discussion, just generally chit-chatting. And at the end, I was like, damn, I really should have recorded that. So I'm so excited for you to be sharing with us so much about what you do in terms of bringing women together and creating women's circles and what your mission has now become in the world. But before we kind of dive into that, I really, probably just for my own benefit, I'd love to know, where does your name come from and what does it mean? Because when I hear your name, Mitle Southey, I instantly kind of think of like an elven princess from a fantasy novel.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be amazing? Thank you for such a beautiful welcome. So my name unfortunately doesn't have a really exciting story. It was my grandmother's name, my paternal grandmother's name, and it is spelled Mitle with an acute accent on the E. Her family were actually in southern India for a long time, and when I went back to visit where they lived and the family that had taken over their properties, they said that there was a local Hindu name that was very similar, although spelt completely differently. So I think they just borrowed a name and Europeanized it. So there's no meaning. I've never found another one. And I've never found another one except for a few who are named after me.
Wow. Well, that's very cool. You've started up your own legacy. That's awesome. One of a kind. Oh, beautiful. So I'd love for you to just take us through a little bit, because I know from your own personal journey, you've had so many interesting twists and turns to how you came to be on the path that you are currently on. So can you just take us through what has been your journey to creating circles and discovering circles as your own soul medicine?
Yes, absolutely. It's been an incredible journey, and one that I really did not foresee at all. So I actually started another business, an organic coffee bar and cafe, with my partner just after we had become parents. We had a 6-month-old baby, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves in for. We had hospitality experience, but in terms of learning to run a business and become parents within a very short period of time was quite a baptism. It was incredibly challenging. And during that time, I found that all of my focus was on being a mother and trying to get a new business going. And I really felt a lot of my friendships, a lot of the support that I'd had during my pregnancy just fell away because I didn't have the time and the energy to put into them. And I found myself feeling really alone and pretty desperate and lost. And my relationship was under a lot of pressure. And while I'd been pregnant, I had actually been to a circle at our local red tent. And during my pregnancy, I'd been quite involved. We built the tent and there had been several circles held there. And that had been my first real experience of a women's circle. And I just remember in this, as we do, when you're on your knees and thinking, oh, what can I do? I just remembered that feeling of being held, that feeling of being in an intimate gathering of women and feeling completely safe. And I just knew that I had to go to a women's circle. It was like, that's what I need to do. And at that time, there weren't any that I was aware of still running locally or regularly, or at a time that I could get to, that I could find. So I just started my own. And when I look back, it was really random and quite crazy. But it just felt like the right thing to do. And I held the first circles on the floor of my cafe. My partner helped me move all the furniture out. I covered it with rugs and cushions and candles and incense, and created an altar and made food and put gift bags together, and just invited women I knew to join me.
Wow.
And it was an incredible experience. I was really nervous. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do it. And I had, done quite a lot of research. I'm a researcher, so I was like looking online, trying to find all these, and found very, very little information, actually. I think there's a lot more even now, 2 or 3 years on, or River's 5, so 5 years on.
Wow.
I'm like, oh yeah, 5 years on. There is a lot more information out there, and a lot more guidance, I think. But yeah, that's how it started. It was just this remembering of something and this yearning within that I needed to be part of that. And for some reason, for me, that meant creating my own and leading them. Wow.
So very much that inner calling. That's so beautiful. And it's funny, as you know, I'm up in Perth and you're down in Denmark. And I actually know the red tent that you're referring to. When I went and visited Denmark about 2 years ago, I saw this big red thing in a paddock, and I didn't know anything. Like, as you say, like there's not a lot of information, and it's not really part of our common dialogue as women, as this idea of having a sacred space to come together. And so I remember seeing this red tent and kind of crawling. I think I was trespassing at the time. I was very curious. I was inquisitive. I remember kind of crawling in under the fence and going in and having a look, because I was just so intrigued, and I knew the woman who owned the property. And yeah, just it had such a feeling in it. It had such an energy, and it felt like, for me, almost a returning back to the womb, the very beginning of where we begin our physical manifestation as women. And it was just so potent. And since then, I've had a very deep fascination with sisterhood in general, but also the women's circles, which is why I'm so fascinated and so in love with the work that you're doing. And so for women that perhaps this is their first time hearing anything like this, can you just take us through what is a women's circle and what actually happens in circle and what makes it unique?
Yeah, absolutely. I think firstly, just that there are lots of different types of women's circles. So I'm going to share with you how I run my circles. But I always encourage women, when they are getting curious about circles and looking for them, to keep looking. There will be a circle that suits them. So Red Tent is quite a big movement, but it's not for all women. I lead what I call is circles with a modern twist. And there are lots and lots of different types and different types of rituals and ceremony. So the circles that I lead are really for that modern woman who wants to go deeper, who wants that deep connection with herself and knows that she's craving a connection with other women, but probably has a feeling of what we call sister wounds, but a little alienation. She may have had some mistrust of other women. A lot of women like me have worked in corporate world, so we've built up a few barriers around sisterhood. And although we may have deep friends and good friends and deep friendships, the actual just getting together with a group of women is not always that appealing. So when you do accept that invitation, when you do accept that call, what you can expect is an incredible place without judgment. You will be seen and heard, received, accepted, just as you are, just as you come into that space. And the beauty of the circle itself, it is highly symbolic because there is no hierarchy. So whoever has called that gathering together, whoever is holding that space, yes, they have a role to facilitate that space. But as you sit in circle, you all have the same view from different parts of the circle, obviously, but you're all looking in. You can all see each other's faces. You can all see above. You can all see below. You all see the center of the circle where your energies all cross through. And so this is something that most of us haven't experienced, a place where we're all equal. And on that sort of grows into how the circle is conducted. And again, that'll depend on the facilitator or the leader. But mostly a big part of my circles is around sharing and practicing using our voice, practicing saying what's actually going on for us. And when we're speaking and sharing, the other women in circle are practicing listening, because these are skills and things that we don't necessarily get to do in everyday life. So listening without agenda, listening to another woman speak without having to work out whether you think she's right or wrong, or judge of what she's saying as good or bad. And that is an incredibly empowering position to be in, as the sharer, as the speaker, to be received with knowing that no one's judging you. You can feel that energy, that you're simply sharing what's true for you in that moment, and no one's going to question that. And as the women listening, we're listening without a need to form an opinion on what you're sharing. We're simply holding the space for you to explore that. And there are lots of other things that can go on in a circle. There is ceremony and ritual. So at my circles, I do what I call self-created ritual. So we will normally create a centerpiece or an altar. We will do various practices, set intentions, but it is created by us. So I don't follow any particular lineage, any particular spirituality per se. It is self-created by the women that come and what feels good for us in that moment. And there's lots of, there's tears, women cry, and it may be the first time they've ever been able to cry and just be held without anyone telling them that everything's going to be okay, or patting them on the head, or trying to give them a hug. They're just allowed to let those tears flow. But there's also lots of laughter. Like, you get a group of women together, we laugh a lot. At my circles, we dance, we do some journaling. There's so much. There are so many different practices that can be incorporated. But my message, the core of my circles, is having a safe space in which to share, so that we learn to use our voices. We learn to not only share what's going on for us, but you'll receive, no one's going to give you any advice unless you ask for it, so that you learn to share what's going on and then invite feedback or advice or reflection from the other women. So we really get to practice empowering ourselves, which for most of us isn't something we get a lot of experience in our day-to-day lives.
Yes. Oh my God. I loved how, as you were explaining that, the key word that you were using was learning, learning to use our voice and learning to truly witness and listen to one another. But, just because we develop the ability to speak doesn't mean that we actually know how to use our voice. It just means that we have learned how to replicate language in order to attempt to convey meaning. But so often there's a disconnect between the words that we use and the meaning that we're actually wanting to convey, the truth of it, because we're disconnected from that internal place of knowing. So I love that you're talking about it as something that not even learning, but almost having to relearn how to own our voice, and to be in a space where women are just truly listening to you and not offering advice means that if you want advice, you have to tap into your own need in order to articulate that you want someone's support, which I think is just so powerful. I don't think that as women or as a society, we're really taught how to do that, how to verbalize our needs and how to actually receive that support without making the other person responsible for our healing, which is often what happens if we accept unsolicited advice. It's like if we implement that advice, well, it's like, well, they gave me bad advice. So there's a disconnect between our own responsibility for the information we're receiving and the person that is sharing. So I love that you've said that. That's so powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. In our day-to-day lives, we can often be very passive in how we're receiving advice and the things that we're actually acting on. And my own personal journey was one of feeling very disempowered. I was continually giving my power away, and then being able to blame other people for things not working out. And circles and sisterhood really helped me heal that. And I use the word heal in that sense of coming back to wholeness, in sense of coming back to be able to trust myself, in terms of learning what it is that I wanted to say and being willing to take responsibility for myself. And circles for me, again, it's a cauldron. It's where we get, if you go to circles regularly, You learn and you practice, and you get to practice taking self-responsibility. You get to practice being discerning in what you're sharing in order to take care of yourself, and also in terms of what you're asking for. If you actually would like advice or support or help, being able to articulate what it is that you want, rather than expecting other people to second guess or to give you advice that is actually unhelpful. Or that you put yourself in a position where, as you said, you're then following what other people have told you to do without even checking if it is aligned with where you're at and what you need to do right now. And being able to do that with a group of women in a supportive environment, that what I talk about a lot, and this was my personal experience, is that ripples out. So when you come out of circle, it doesn't just stop. That work continues. You suddenly find you're able to express yourself with more clarity in your personal relationships. You're able to go deeper in your friendships because you don't shun away from the difficult conversations or the arguments. You're able to say, this is how I feel. You're able to do that in the workplace, in your business, in your communities, in our institutions. You know, I talk about women's circles, but circles themselves are such a powerful way for us to learn how to govern, to be in community with one another, and to be in relationship with one another. Sorry, I'm a little bit overexcited by what circles can do for the world.
No, I love it. And I love that you're so passionate about it, because I know that there are going to be women listening to this that perhaps have never even conceived of women's circles. It's completely new information. Or there's going to be women that have felt a similar call but haven't known how to answer it. And, you know, I put myself in that bucket. For the past year, I've very much been wanting to bring together community, but there's been a part of me that's been afraid of stepping into that role because of, not being, quote unquote, spiritual enough, in the sense of my externalization of and ritualization of my spirituality in terms of what other people think it means to be spiritual. So, everything that you're saying is so important. And I love the individual nature of the circle, that it is a collaboration of all the women's energy coming together. It's not one person hovering above everyone else dictating how that circle flows, which I'd love you to kind of expand upon that a little bit, because I know for a lot of my audience, they may be coaches or practitioners or in the healing role. And when we're working one-on-one with the client, there's almost this kind of unspoken, you are the healer, you are there to fix their problem, because that's what they're paying you to do. So as a facilitator, how would you describe not taking on or how to kind of manage that need to interject or to try to come up with a solution to help resolve someone's perceived suffering?
That's such a good question. And I think, yes, in a one-on-one role, depending on what a client has engaged you for, I think that relationship can draw on a lot of elements of circle, depending on exactly how you work. If I can start with how we do that in circle, and I think you've heard me speak about the fixers, is what I call you. The beautiful women who are, they're programmed, it's part of their nature to want to help. So therefore, when we sit in circle, for example, if a woman starts to cry, we don't rush to her. We have clear guidelines so that everybody is scaffolded and understands what we do. But we sit there and we allow her to let those tears go. We allow her to release, however long that takes. And for some women, this is incredibly uncomfortable. And I mean, for the women who are holding the space, it's incredibly uncomfortable, because their natural urge, their natural desire is to make her feel better, is to help, is to support her. Whereas in fact, the most supportive thing we can do is allow her to work through that. As soon as we jump in to try and make her feel better, give her a hug, tell her everything's going to be okay, we abort that incredibly powerful process. We abort whatever it is that she needs to release. And she is then flipped into a place where she has to then make you feel better by reassuring you that she's okay. And so we've ended what could be an incredibly powerful release. Now, when we're working one-on-one, I try very hard, and this again has been very much a learning experience for me. I work with clients one-on-one to bring that magic and medicine of circle to one-on-one work. So starting your one-on-one work with a very similar way, having a ritual to open that when you start with your client, setting that intention to create a safe and sacred space, a safe and sacred container between you, trusting that you're both a channel and that whatever comes through for that session will be perfect. And then while in that session, and again, it does depend, if you're coaching someone around their business, or if you're coaching them in terms of an emotional trauma, there's going to be a very different approach. But being able to sit and hold space applies across the board, rather than rushing in and giving answers. Simply being able and being comfortable enough within yourself to hold that space. We as women know we have everything we need within us, but we sometimes need a guide. We need a guide to help us find that. And we find that in the space, in the silence. Once we've been able to express, share, process what's happening, that's where we get those incredible insights. That's where we understand what we have to do. And I think our roles as coaches, as mentors, as supporters, as cheerleaders, is to learn more and more about how to hold that space.
Yes.
We can give scaffolding, we can give information, we can support with the practical. When I'm mentoring women in terms of stepping into their role as a circle holder, I guide them to create their own circles. I don't teach them how to create mine. And I think that is pretty much applicable to most modalities. And obviously, if there's a very specific modality that you practice, you'll have your own systems, and systems probably isn't quite the right word, but you'll have your own process, your own flow for a one-on-one client. But I do think whatever our modality is, practicing holding space for one another in that effective way, which allows your client some time at least to go within, will really help her to find those answers, to learn to trust herself and not become reliant on you as the person she needs in order to move forward.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love everything that you're saying. And, in terms of the holding space, it's actually funny. As you were talking about holding space, I was thinking about a very dear friend of mine, and she and I are a bit chalk and cheese in that when she was asked to hold space, she just looked at the person. She's like, I have no friggin' idea what that means. And so she just smiled at the person that was asking. We were at an event, and I remember just kind of laughing to myself, thinking how often we don't really understand the depth of the language that we're using. And I hear a lot of women, say things like, I see you. In Facebook groups, someone will share their pain and there'll be 50 comments saying, I see you, sister, I'm here with you. But sometimes you can feel the hollowness of that. There's not a vibrational integrity between that. And often when we're holding space, I tend to think of it as, if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, you're not holding space. Or if you're stuck in your own discomfort, wanting to dispel that as soon as possible by trying to crimp someone else's flow of release, then you're not holding space. It's very much about witnessing not just the person, but yourself. And I think that's where the mutual healing of something like Circle becomes so pronounced in that space, because it's a mutual release that is being facilitated for everyone, the witness and the person doing the release.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I laugh, I joke about holding space because it's a term that is so used. There's a fantastic comedian, JP Sears. I find him really funny. He does a great on holding space, and he's just like, I hold space rather than doing something that could actually be helpful. And it just always makes me giggle, and it's one of my favorites. But what you've described is exactly right. When we're talking about holding space for one another, we're being with that person fully, completely, without agenda. We're not attached to whether what they're saying is good or bad or right or wrong. We're not attached to the outcome of where whatever they're saying is leading to. And we're not thinking about what we're going to say. We're not thinking about responding to what they're saying. We're having this beautiful conversation, but part of me is listening intently so that I can respond. But when I'm with somebody, when I'm holding space in Circle or even one-on-one, it takes work, it takes vigilance and diligence to not go to that space where I need to respond to what they're going to say. Just trust that I can be here fully, completely to witness you and whatever it is that you're going through and need to share in this moment, and trust that that is enough. And that's the thing. We don't necessarily trust that that is enough. There's a part of us that wants to help. And we've been taught that helping is doing something. We have to do something. We have to take an action in order to help. Whereas actually, we can help and be useful by truly witnessing, being fully present, without thinking about what we're going to do when we get home, without thinking about what we're going to say next, without thinking what's going to happen after we've left circle, just to be fully present. And I loved what you said about vibrational integrity, because I think in this beautiful world with Facebook, and I'm a big social media fan, like I run my whole business from my phone pretty much, which I think is incredible. But yes, if you're going to read a post, a deep, vulnerable share that someone has had the courage to put out on social media, read it. And when you comment, get into vibrational alignment with the comment. Don't just say, I see you, I'm holding space for you. Drop into your heart space and, be like, I see you, sister. I am with you. And then share the comment, because you're absolutely right. It's not a hollow comment is of no import. What's the point? Don't discredit your sister. Don't dismiss her experience and her share by simply dropping a comment that has no meaning for you. Just take a few moments and just get into vibrational integrity. Send it with love, with pure love, and do it from that position. I think that is so much more powerful. And in that way, we can use media such as social media to still connect, because energy is energy. Doesn't matter if we're doing it here as we are on Zoom or through social media or in an in-person gathering. Energy is energy. And people often ask me about the power of in-person circles as opposed to online circles. And I always have run both. And my answer has always been the same. They're not mutually exclusive. One isn't better than the other. They're different and they offer different things. But they are both incredibly powerful because it's energy first. And that doesn't matter where we are.
Yes, perfect. And speaking of energy, and you did answer this quite a bit in terms of being kind of in your own sovereign when you're witnessing someone else, but I'd love to talk about how would you avoid taking on other people's energy for something as emotionally and energetically intimate a circle, and particularly, if you are kind of moving from the healer space or the coach space into working in circle and bringing women together, how do you avoid taking on the energy of the women that you are holding space for?
Thank you for this question. And I think it's a really interesting question. I'm going to share with you my own personal experience, because I don't know that I have an answer for everyone. I know that I see a lot of posts for women who feel very much that they take on other people's energy, and therefore facilitating or holding a circle can feel, I think, a little bit overwhelming, because, oh my gosh, am I going to take on the energy of, 10 other women? I was very fortunate in the training that I did as an intuitive guide. She trained with Vicky Jane Adams of the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. And so she teaches in quite a different way. And therefore, for me, I don't feel that I take on other people's energy. I feel that we leak our own energy rather than take on other people's. So therefore, what I teach in terms of for circle leaders is very much about your own self-care pre and post circle. And I do mean hot baths. I love hot baths, but also your energetic care. So making sure that you get into that state of what we just talked about, into energetic alignment before you start, that you have set a very clear intention, that you have created a sacred space for those women to come into. And you're very clear about your boundaries, your energetic boundaries, as well as your personal boundaries when you're holding this space. So that when you're in circle, you are able to sit. You use the word sovereign, which I love. You're able to sit in that space that you have created, knowing that you're not leaking energy. And I think when we come to holding space, again, it's about staying there, allowing everybody else to do what they need to do. You're co-creating this experience. Each woman is responsible for herself. You are not responsible. So I think there is work for some women to do around taking on responsibility for everything that's occurring. And one of the aspects that I teach and go into a lot of detail is having very, very good and clear circle guidelines that you share with the women who are called to circle with you, so that everybody is scaffolded. And then as you come to the end of that circle and you close that space, and I talk a lot about this as well, that closing that energetic space is a really important part of the ritual. It doesn't have to be long and complicated, but it is important to close the space that you have shared together to bring that to an end. And then after that circle, I'm so sorry, can you hear the rain? We've just suddenly got
no
incredible downpour of rain. I'm like, oh gosh. So then, yes, your post-circle care. And I tend to use the word integration. I share it with the women who are leaving circle to give themselves time to integrate after that experience. You know, that may be lots of water, sleep, a long hot bath, a shower, a walk in nature, whatever it is that you need to do to cleanse your energy, to integrate that experience. And for the circle holder, I teach and train and help women to create their own ritual for after circles. So that again, if they have felt that they have leaked energy, or something has been very challenging, or somebody has shared something that has triggered you as the circle holder, knowing that you have the tools and the practices and the support to work through that after circle. And I guess that's a slightly different point, but as circle holders, it's very, very important that we are taking care of our own energetic health, our emotional health, and our mental health. So really upping your self-care practices across those, and knowing that in circle, as the other women in circle may be triggered, we're mirrors, we're reflections, we trigger one another, to know that you as a circle holder could also be triggered by someone's share. So looking at energy, but also looking at the emotional and mental health as well, and having that in place pre and post circle. It was a really long answer.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. And I was wanting to talk to you a little bit about the energetic self-care element. And so you've answered that perfectly. So thank you so much. When we were beginning our discussion, you mentioned sister wounds, and I'm seeing and feeling such strong kind of parallels between the work that you're doing with bringing women into circle and the healing of the sister wounds, and potentially even the mother wounds that are kind of fracturing down the feminine bloodline. So would you mind just taking us through a little bit of what is a sister wound, and for those that don't know, and just explaining for us a little bit your own journey with them and how that has begun to release and relax and yield through women's circles.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I think I personally love the term sister wounds. When I first heard it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. That explains my experience. So, but I know that it can be quite a challenging term for a lot of women. I've experimented with using it, and some women find it quite confronting. But I think the important thing for us to remember is that we, at a collective level and at an individual level, we have all suffered some form of trauma, some form of discrimination, some form of betrayal. And we can, trace this back to, depending on your own personal lineage, but, the witch hunts, slavery, across history, women have been treated in all sorts of dreadful ways. So we have that kind of collective memory, collective remembering. And through some of those experiences, it was much safer for women to be alone, to isolate themselves from other women, because as soon as we gathered with other women, we were accused of being witches. And so we have carried that forward to a certain extent. The other side for me of that sister wound you mentioned is the mother wound. And we all have stories regarding our own mothers, grandmothers, our feminine line. And it's really important work to go back through that. And especially those who also become mothers, what is it that you want to pass forward to your children? And then sister wounds, in I guess a more generalized form, for me, are really those betrayals, those fallings out, from in corporate world. I remember once being told it was hard for me, it should be hard for you, as opposed to, we're clearing the way, come on, we're making it easier. And I've had lots of stories like that. And it's not all women, but most women in the corporate world have an experience of being mistreated by another woman. I think even from school bullying, people have experienced being betrayed by another woman, to friendships, to marriage breakdowns. Sisterhood is incredible, but it doesn't exist in a safe way if we don't acknowledge that women also harm women, unintentionally or intentionally. So to pretend that we're all best friends and that, you know, we would never do damage to one another does us a disservice. What is much more important is for us to be able to be willing to look at where we have been harmed by other women and to heal that, but also to look at where we have harmed other women, as I said, intentionally or unintentionally, and to do the work to heal that. And I think it's a big topic, but what I have experienced when we come together in circle is we get that opportunity to sit with women we don't know, to sit with women from all backgrounds. You know, it's so much deeper and broader than friendship. It's not reliant on shared, you know, where you live or what your work is or how you parent or what business you're in or where you grew up. It's like, it's not reliant on any of those usual parameters of how we perhaps choose our friendships. And you sit there and you hear a woman who may have nothing in common with you on the surface, and you hear her story and you realize she's a reflection. She's a mirror of what you've experienced. She's a mirror of feelings that you have that you perhaps have never been able to express before. And so for me, that is how circles help us to heal those wounds. We still have to do our own work, but we get to come together and hear each other's stories, hear what's true for one another, and remember our own experiences and realize that separation is not true. Separation is fear. So this work really brings us back to love and understanding, you know, this is the spiritual truth that all is one. And that's what we get to experience in circle. And therefore we can go out and heal our relationships with other women in our life. This can take time. And this work, you know, I'm a circle holder. I hold circles weekly. I train women to hold circles. And most recently, I have been through a difficult relationship with a dear, dear friend. And we've had to really dig deep and repair that. And of course, I've had a lot of, oh my goodness, you know, this is what I'm all about. This is appalling. I'm not walking my walk. But what I realized was I am, because I was willing to do the work. I was willing to show up and say, where do we need to go here? And so I think when we're talking of sister wounds, that's where we start to have these different layers of sisterhood. You know, the layer where we come together in a circle and we start, then the next layer of the women who you're really, when the problems come up after that honeymoon period, you're willing to go deeper. You're willing to look at those and go, okay, what have we done? How have we harmed one another? How can we repair this? And it just goes deeper and deeper. And whether we do that in circle or in our individual relationships, I think that overlaps and weaves through and helps us be stronger and helps us be in relationship with people at a much more authentic way, with deeper integrity and deep, deep love.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you. How I would kind of describe what you just said is striking, not just in its beauty, but in its truth, because I think that even what you're saying in terms of the layers of sisterhood is that it can be easy to go towards the surface layer or the most external layer of sisterhood. But I think what a lot of women lack is the trust that the sisterhood will remain beyond its original container. You know, in a world where, you know, we'll all go to like weekend workshops to learn something, or, you know, we'll join a Facebook group, or maybe weave in and out of friendship groups. It's the trust that when things are rocky, the support will still be there. There's still someone to catch you. There's still someone holding space in those moments when you slip the mask of needing to be, you know, the perfect friend or the perfect partner or the perfect practitioner or coach or whatever it is. And so I think that moving through those layers is really where that trust begins to build. And I think in terms of the work that you're doing with bringing women together in circle, what really struck me about that was saying that being in a room of women that you don't know and trusting that whoever is in that circle is exactly who needs to be there for that time, for their own release and for your own, and to be open to see those reflections, to see those mirrors, and to trust that whatever's coming forth is in its divine timing and in its authentic beauty and in its original expression. And I think that's where, you know, even in terms of my biggest takeaway from this discussion, that's where the trust in sisterhood begins to build, is trusting that the connection is there no matter what form it comes in, and that we don't have to be responsible for dictating the form of that connection.
Yeah, I love the way you've articulated that. And I think just to extend that the more women who come to a circle, the more women who can experience this connection, then when we do go out into the world and connect with one another, we have that base. It's as though we've been not retrained, but like we have another level at which to connect with. We're willing to go deeper, quicker. And I mean, you and I are both introverts, and we tend to go deep quickly anyway. We're not great at the small talk at the best of times. But what I've come to learn is A, we make really good circle holders, but B is that is actually a really beautiful gift, and one that we can embrace both in circle and outside of circle. What I've learned in my journey, what I've witnessed, is that most women are craving that deep connection. Most women aren't wanting to simply connect at a surface level, but that's how society appears to work. So the more we come together in circle, the more we start to break down what's expected of us and recreate how we want to interact, how we want to connect, and what really matters when you meet somebody.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so, Mitle, thank you so much for being here and having this discussion. And I know that you've got a lot going on in your own personal world at the moment, and things are evolving very quickly. So would you mind sharing with us a little bit of what is going on in your world and what the next 6 months are going to look like for you?
Oh my goodness, yes. So, well, my world is pretty exciting at the moment. I have just returned from a trip home. I'm originally from the UK, and I have made the decision to relocate back to the UK for some much needed time, really reconnecting with my roots and my lineage, and reconnecting back with my family and Mother Earth, where I come from. So that feels really exciting to me. Over the next 6 months, I am currently touring Australia with my circle school. So I've got dates coming up in Sydney, and then I think Brisbane, Perth, and perhaps Adelaide I'm trying to squeeze in. So that has been my focus this year, is actually traveling around Australia, holding my circles and inviting women who want to step into that role to come and join me in a beautiful 3-day training experience. So that takes up quite a lot of my time. And yeah, getting ready to head back to the UK and to really deepen my practices, deepen my own connection. And I will then be visiting Australia again, and holding a retreat style training in Bali next year, so that women can come and train with me, and then train if they want to train women to step into the role of circles. So my whole mission is really to get as many women as possible to a women's circle. That's what I want to do. I want every woman to experience a circle and to keep looking to find the one that nourishes her. And that gives her a glimpse of what is possible when we gather in that way. So that's what I'm doing, training women so that we can just hold circles everywhere, every town, every city, just have access to us. I just keep looking and thinking, you can imagine if we all had easy and regular access to women's circles, it would just be incredible.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And for any woman that is listening that is in any of those cities, I would definitely recommend that you check out Mitle's website and connect with her to see if being in circle is something that really calls to you and is calling to that deeper, ancient feminine wisdom within you that is wanting to express in a place that is very safe and held. And so, Mitle, what would you say is kind of the one big takeaway that you would love women to have from this discussion going forward?
I think for me, it is, I always say to women, I honor your journey and I bow to your courage. And that is my big takeaway, wherever you are on your journey, to keep going, to trust that you will find a circle of women that can support you and that you will have the opportunity to experience how incredible that can be. And that it takes courage for all of us to have got wherever we have got to. And when you can connect and see that courage reflected in other women and see their journeys, it's so incredibly powerful. So my big takeaway is, please find a circle. And keep it close.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Mitle. This has been such a beautiful discussion, and I know so many women will benefit from it. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was beautiful. Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of the Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. And you can connect with Mitle at mitlesouthey.com and also find the links to her website, her Facebook page, and her Instagram over at the show notes at blairrhianna.com/10. So I am wishing you a blessed week, and until next time, I'm Blair Rhianna, and I cannot wait to see you shine your light in the way that only you can. Bye for now.